Check. I'm just getting it right quick. You know what I'm saying? Shit, you know what it is. Home Inc. TV, hustles on a mission every day. The Lit House, Everyday Shit Media, sponsored by dividendsapparel.com. What you do? Make sure you do it capital. Create a positive impact today and later. Fuck them haters. Get your paper straight like that. You know what I'm saying? You see what the title is. Another R.N.R moment, real nigga reaction. We're going to get right into it right here. You know what I'm talking about. The Eventual Fall of America documentary, a dramatic speculation. Hold up, forgot one other thing. Well, I always forget that shit. Every time I mirror that bit, I be forgetting to put it back there. And now we go.
History teaches us one thing. Change is inevitable. This most ancient truth has been illustrated time and time again as every great empire, no matter how powerful, eventually falls. In every instance, wise men have predicted their empire's end, but their dire warnings went unheeded. Is it possible that in modern times this may be happening close to home? Could America be headed for catastrophe? There are men among us today who believe a collapse is not only possible, but that it has already begun. Unlike Nostradamus or other bygone prophets, they look not to crystal balls or the stars, but to actual evidence to reinforce their claims. Their visions are of financial instability, oil and water depletion, hostile technology, and terrorist aggression. These men are gathering now to share their visions of the dangers that threaten the American way of life. They look to the lessons of empires past for clues to how we may avoid their fate, for ways we can prevent history from repeating itself so that America does not descend into oblivion, like every great empire that has come before. Michael Craig Rupert has long foreseen the impending threats to America. Born in 1951 in Washington, D.C., his family had ties to the CIA, U.S. Air Force, and Army. As a detective for the Los Angeles Police Department, he uncovered a CIA drug trafficking operation in 1977. This led him to found an organization dedicated to exposing government corruption. A political
them fuck
renegade,
niggas.
he has never been afraid to speak his mind, and Rupert is now certain our society is disintegrating from within.
We cannot, as a nation, as a planet, or as a species,
Niggas been
continue
saying that,
to
though.
live the way we have under the assumptions that we have, because if we do, we are committing suicide.
This isn't about environmentalism anymore. This is not a lefty, feel-good, fuzzy, warm, save the whale issue. This is a matter of survival.
By this time next year, I'm certain that we won't recognize the United States of America.
Rupert believes that our explosive population growth over the past 2 centuries is the result of one thing: fossil fuel.
One of the first applications was to create an internal combustion powered tractor for the purpose of plowing, because you could multiply the number of acres that could be plowed. And then it was discovered that you could make fertilizers out of ammonia, which is produced from natural gas. So it became possible to feed many more people as oil and natural gas began to be used more and more. It is solely the fact of hydrocarbon energy, specifically internal combustion powered engines, ammonium-based fertilizers made from natural gas, and pesticides made from petroleum, that has allowed the human population to expand in just a little over 120, 130 years.
In the starkest terms, human population was fairly stable at just under 1.5, 2 billion people from the time of Christ until oil was discovered. There was a slight dip for the bubonic plague, a slight increase as the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution came along with steam and with coal. But it was not until the discovery and use of oil that human population skyrocketed from a simple arithmetic standpoint. If you just look at the numbers, essentially 5 billion too many people are living on this planet today that are not sustainable by any other means. As human civilization undergoes this enormous, painful transition, everything that mankind has held sacred is on the table. It's a matter of life and death now.
The
Like
United
it's
States
always been for
population
niggas.
more than tripled in the 20th century. It is projected to increase yet another 46% by the end of the year 2050. With fossil fuels running out, Rupert does not see how our infrastructure will keep pace.
You know, I think food exemplifies our problem as much as anything else. We have boxed ourselves into a situation where we transport food over enormous distances, where we fail to return nutrients to the topsoil so that it will grow anything else without those chemicals. And if those chemicals that come from oil and natural gas go away, the food goes away. And if the food goes away, people starve. And that process is beginning all over the world now. Our population is still growing, even as the resources needed to keep that population fed are going away. Our population should be diminishing also, but we're in a condition of overshoot. We're still expanding. There aren't enough resources on a finite planet, a closed sphere, to sustain infinite growth. We just can't do it.
Rupert believes the America of the future will bear little resemblance to the nation we know now.
The indicators that the United States of America is collapsing are all around us. The changes now are going to come much more rapidly. They're going to be much harder to take. And the choices that we make now are going to determine how we're able to deal with those challenges. It's a question about our ability to eat, to stay warm, to move, to interact, to live any kind of a life that bears any resemblance to anything like the life that we've lived before or that has any kind of quality in it. It means that the way of life that the world has come to know since the discovery of oil about 130, 140 years ago is all coming to an end.
New World Order.
We are going to see things like government, cities, and towns going bankrupt, which is happening. School districts are cutting back to 4-day weeks. Everywhere, major cities are doing police cutbacks and fire cutbacks. We're seeing major infrastructure failures. An explosion in San Bruno, California, of a natural gas pipeline that was laid in 1948, and nobody had the money to repair the infrastructure. We're going to see major failures and calamities and disasters like that. The bridge failure in Minnesota a few years ago, not to mention 30 million unemployed, collapsing home values all over the place, foreclosures soaring. We are seeing all the signs of collapse throughout this country, and they're becoming more obvious every day.
Rupert is certain these troubles aren't temporary, nor are they the ordinary products of an economic downturn. He is convinced they are symptoms of a coming collapse.
Collapse has happened to every empire in human history. That seems to be, if you will, a natural law, that empires can grow to a certain place and then they implode.
2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire was the most powerful on Earth. The similarities between Rome then and America today are striking. And the story of what ultimately befell that nation is told in museums around the world.
Like here in America today, Rome's armies were spread too thin in too many foreign countries. Barbarian invasions, like terrorist attacks and cross-border incursions, as we see in Mexico's drug wars, were constant.
The government was corrupt, and the only way to get anything accomplished was through bribery or by increasing taxes. This is no different than the stranglehold lobbyists, banks, corporations have on our government today. America, like ancient Rome, has this blind faith that we are superior to the rest of the world and it's our destiny to reign supreme forever. It's not going to happen. We are going to learn some hard lessons and adjust to some hard circumstances, but we do have choices. The American empire is going to fall, but we do not all have to fall with it.
Damn sure don't. The more you know, better prepare
America
yourself.
dominates the world today on a scale far
This shit we
greater
put out
than
3
even
years ago.
Rome could have imagined. But history as well as nature prove that size itself is no guarantee of continued survival.
And what's in front of us now is the same thing that was in front of the dinosaurs: evolve or perish, grow up or die. Change the way you think and the way you operate, because the universe will, without remorse, coldly it might seem, but with the beauty that is natural law, will let us go extinct. The question of survival is very much like the Titanic. A huge ship that was believed to be unsinkable, that could go forever. On its maiden voyage, it sank, but there weren't enough lifeboats on that ship to save all the lives on board. At any point in that voyage, and especially after the iceberg hit, had there been an organized effort to scavenge from the Titanic enough material to make lifeboats, many, many hundreds of lives more might have been saved. Titanic, of course, is a great word. It implies and encompasses the size and the complexity of human industrial civilization. The Titanic is going to sink, and there are some people that will not believe it until they're underwater.
Michael Rupert isn't the only one with dark visions of the future. Others also anticipate the fall of America. Each believes the cause will be different, but the outcome hauntingly similar. They meet to share their insights to try to gain a broad perspective on the challenges we must confront, and to decide which threat is of most immediate concern.
The most important priorities that we have are saving lives. If I had to sum all the problems down to one word, it is overpopulation. Because there are 5 billion people on the planet today who did not exist at the dawn of the oil age. And they exist only because of oil and natural gas.
You know, it sounds like you're talking about the great die-off, like the Permian Triassic, you know, the mother of all mass.
There's a mass extinction underway right now.
Going through, they called it the great die-off.
I'll interject a few thoughts on that. I am not predicting any die-off. The near-term hurdle is we have to deal with our excessive errors we've made in our financial system. We've lived beyond our means, and we've extended that living beyond our means by issuing more credit, and there's going to be a reckoning there. The financial system as we know it is completely untenable, and there are going to be big changes. Once the majority of those changes happen, history shows time and again that people inherently help each other out. The more people prepare, the less likely that an exogenous financial shock is going to be a disaster. Our economic system is actually a giant global Ponzi scheme. How that unravels is going to have big consequences for the average American.
America today is the mightiest nation since the dawn of man. Yet history tells us empires rise only to inevitably fall. The circumstances change, but the results do not. Now, there are those who believe America's destiny will be no different. One of these men is Nathan Hagens, born 1965 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. With a PhD in natural resources, this former investment banker was managing a hedge fund when he came to the conclusion our current economic system was unsupportable. He resigned.
Our economic system is actually a giant global Ponzi scheme. And the way that translates is a lot of this debt and credit that has been built may someday never be paid off. How that unravels is going to have big consequences for the average American. Capitalism is going to have to be retooled, or it's going to completely go by the wayside. What we have now has been a failure. The future is going to look very different than the past in one primary regard, in that the world economy will no longer continue to grow. Until 12,000 years ago, humans lived on a hunter-gatherer foraging lifestyle. And then we started to find and develop agricultural methods where we could grow things that we didn't need to eat that day. We could store them for many months or even a year. And then we started to live more sedentary lifestyles and develop technology, et cetera. And then in the 1700s, we basically hit the energy jackpot when we figured out how to use coal, and then subsequently in the 1800s, oil, and then in the last century, natural gas. Now the question is, what's going to replace fossil fuels? Every American right now has 200 to 300 energy slaves standing behind them doing work that we take for granted. The energy in the taxi that got me here today, the lights in this building, our food system. The average food travels 1,500 miles to get to our plate, and that all uses energy.
Think about how
All
much
these
energy
things
your
are
house using right
subsidized by
now.
a one-time endowment of
I know,
fossil
I do it on a
energy
bunch
that
of
is so powerful that for all human intents and purposes, it is indistinguishable from magic.
Higgins believes the current global depression is the beginning of an economic collapse that will intensify as natural resources run out and alternative energies fail to replace them in time.
Technology is in a race with depletion, and depletion is winning. People need to recognize, okay, we live on a finite planet and we have virtually infinite wants and perceived needs, but those two trends are butting up against each other, and what are we going to do about it? We've been so endowed with natural resources for 60, 70, 80 years, we have not really thought that this was a problem. There have been some recessions and even a Great Depression, but we've always reset from that. We build our institutions and our expectations assuming that this sort of subsidy will...
No, we don't reset from it. They just add to the motherfucking debt. Ain't that shit how much? 2 many trillions? They don't reset shit.
continue in the future. And now we've built a
just fuck it up
lifestyle
worse.
that is no longer sustainable. We can live within our means, but only when we acknowledge that there are limits. And our economic system right now does not acknowledge that there are limits. The financial system as we know it is completely untenable, and there are going to be big changes.
The idea that our economic system is completely failing is hard to believe, but Higgins points to America's mountainous debt as proof. The balance between that debt and our available resources is delicate. When it tips, the system collapses.
We have built an entire industrial civilization on the assumption that there will be more every year. We now know that resources are harder to find, and in order to keep the system going, we've flooded the American economy as well as the world economy with more and more credit. We've created a large debt overhang, and right now we're kind of in this Wile E. Coyote moment where we've fallen off the cliff and the government is supporting the feeling that things are okay, but in reality, right around the corner, there's some very different trajectories. Basic needs, food procurement, water, just knowing that people are going to get fed is going to become more prominent in people's minds, just like it did in the Great Depression. The 1920s were this kind of go-go period where a lot of people were invested in the stock market. On Black Tuesday, the stock market lost 12%.
Damn.
And it lost 40% 2 months later, and eventually the stock market, from its highs in 1929 to its lows in the mid-30s, lost 90% of its value.
90%.
In the
That's
Great Depression,
everything.
around 35 million people lived in families where no one had a job out of a population of 120 million. So during that decade, the average income of those people that worked declined 40%. So it was pretty desperate back then. The government is attempting the same things that it attempted in the 30s by borrowing money and stimulating the economy. But the problem is we can't continue to inject money from thin air into a system and continue to think that it's going to hold together.
And
You
people
cannot
keep stealing the
solve
money.
a credit crisis by adding more credit, period.
And they keep manipulating.
The American economy rebounded from the Great Depression to become larger and more dynamic than ever before, reinforcing the theory of cyclical markets, in which booms are followed by busts, and then ultimately a bigger boom. Hagen's cautions, this belief is more faith than fact.
I believe the United States is insolvent and that some of these debts that we've incurred from the past are going to come home, and we're going to have to face the reality. The moment of bankruptcy comes when people want the money, when they want the claims to be paid off. America, unfortunately, is asleep with a lot of these issues. And part of this,
You can't be sleep out here. I was just finna say that shit, boy. You can't be sleep out here, boy. Hey, and I'm sharing this because it's about creating a positive impact today and later. Don't be sleep out here, bitch.
is due to cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when our brains don't want to acknowledge the gravity or seriousness of the situation. A good example is in Jared Diamond's book Collapse, where he talked about a dam was about to break, and people 3 miles downstream were really afraid, and people 2 miles downstream were like really freaked out. But people living within a mile of the dam, they weren't concerned at all.
And that's just like when the hurricanes come to Florida, they be like, oh, it's a category 5, but it's gonna be a 6. Y'all might want to get the fuck out the way in this area. It's an evacuation. Niggas be like, evacuate what? Leave what? This is my shit. Give a fuck about no damn hurricane, bitch.
If things are
And then niggas end up getting fucked up, stuck in their motherfucking house. Shit get flooded out. When they in the motherfucking area, they supposed to been love. They know they supposed to love.
too frightening and too threatening, our brains tune it out because it would affect our behavior and it would be too painful to
one story
accept.
house in the flood zone.
So peak oil and
in the
peak
city below
credit
sea
and
level.
the depletion of cheap fossil fuels and what that means for the end of growth, it's too overwhelming. The financial reckoning that's coming could include many different scenarios. It could be no more U.S. currency and the U.S. currency is replaced by something else. It may happen that you have $100,000 in your bank and the next day you wake up and you have 10,000 Patriot dollars or something like that.
Patriot dollars.
Many times people remember Weimar Germany in the 1920s where there was...
That nigga said Patriot. That nigga knows something. That nigga said Patriot dollars. Damn. The Patriots gonna have the money? Goddamn Patriot dollar. That nigga said the Patriot dollar. And remember when they were talking about putting Harriet Tubman on the motherfucking $20 bill? That's when I knew something was up. Man, y'all talking about putting the black woman on the $20 bill? Yeah, they think about losing. They're feeling they finna lose this shit.
It's the end of the system of
They
claims.
change the whole currency. Yeah, we gonna put that on 20, but as soon as we do that, this shit finna change up.
The average American knows that something is wrong, but the problem is they don't really speak up and get really vocal about it because they don't know what to do.
Hey, speak up.
Hagen feels
Be
this
vocal.
unprecedented
Do your part,
financial
goddamn.
crisis is the greatest threat to America today.
Whatever
debate
issue you
continues.
got a problem with.
The problems are all interrelated: the economy, energy, food, and water.
okay, and how that works. Because we live in a world clearly where if you have the money, you can buy them.
I put water at the top of the list, by the way, as everything everybody else has talked about, we have lived without once before. We've never lived without water. Which is one of the reasons it's taken for granted. We've never lived without it, and we're running out of it, and we don't see it. We live in a water economy. We do not live in a petroleum economy. Water runs the world. In 5 years at our current rate of behavior, we will have far more options for energy sources and far fewer options for water. But what's the big difference? There are replacements for oil. There are no replacements for water. People will look back on the early 21st century and say, what were they thinking? We are not at the doorstep of a crisis. We are in a crisis.
Facts. And it's been that.
The story of every empire is one of rise and fall. Yet while the United States has seen its share of hard times, the expectation has always been one of boundless growth. History, however, promises one day we will take a long step back. Some men believe that day is today.
Regardless of what our press releases are, it doesn't seem to me that we are making a better world to live in. My experience is the quality of life has been deteriorating rather than getting better.
That sounds like that assumes we're just at base a cynical, selfish species.
The human race has many redeeming qualities. The problem is which ones we choose to make paramount. The problem is which ones we choose to make our North Stars, if you will.
I would still argue that the most pressing, predictable problem is an ongoing economic crisis. We've come across this huge abundance of resources, and we're burning through those. And it's only until we see the bottom of that barrel will we start to change what we compete for and start to use technology as how do we get out of this mess. Sometime in the next decade, there's going to be a financial reckoning where we're going to have to dramatically tighten our belts, use less, consume less, because there will be less available. The United States right now uses twice the energy as the country of Ireland per individual. Yet on subjective well-being studies, they're just as happy as we are. We use 37 times the energy as the average person in the Philippines, yet they are just as happy as we are. So I'm sure that whatever comes, we will be able to adapt to it. It's just the 6-month window of when it happens that I worry about. One comment I'd like to make, though, is we're talking about what the most urgent problems are. Do we care about the next generation? Do we care about other species? Do we care about 300 years from now, how many species or humans might inhabit the planet? Or do we just care about 2025? I mean, most people, frankly, care about this weekend.
Yeah.
Here's a subtle point. We evolved to not address a situation until it stared us in the face. There's something in economics called a discount rate, which is how much we value the present versus the future. A discount rate of 1 means we care only about this second. If you feed a goldfish, if you go out of town for 4 days and give it 4 days of food at once, it will eat until it explodes. Discount rate of 0 is like a robot where you would live for 1,000,000 years and you care about today the exact same as you care about the year 2177. Humans have very steep discount rates. And what this means is that we as a species won't really address our problems until the problems are staring us in the face. You know, peak oil and climate change and all these grand super themes that we read about, these are like 10, 20, 30 years down the road. That has the mental weight of 0 to the average person hearing about it. If there's no toilet paper at the grocery store today and you heard that there's not going to be any anywhere in the country, that's like, oh my God, stock up on toilet paper. So people need an environmental cue showing them that scarcity or change is going to happen.
Higgins believes people don't recognize change until it's staring them in the face. Higgins also believes great changes could be upon us sooner than we realize.
Eventually, the currencies we have right now might go away and might be replaced by something. It's not even my imagination. Our own Treasury Secretary last year mentioned a global currency.
I am absolutely convinced that the imposition of a global currency will expedite the crash of everything much faster.
You know, it's helpful to remember that paper currencies are only about 150 years old. This has been a very short-term experiment.
Can I steer the conversation in a little bit more in a sort of a practical direction for a second? Everything I'm listening to is fascinating, and half of it I agree with, half of it I disagree with. What about our practical problems of the future, which is that we and the world are running out of water?
Damn.
John Cronin, born 1950, is the director of the Beacon
Running out of
Institute
water
for
is
Rivers
crazy.
and Estuaries and a senior fellow at Pace University.
Running out of water is crazy, especially when it was a black man that invented something, a machine, some type of machine to create water out of the air. Takes air and it makes water. Y'all look that up, man. Y'all tell me if that man's still alive, man. Somebody look that up. Tell me if that man's still alive. Drop a comment. Cause that shit crazy. Running out of water is wow. And then there was a man that I ain't going to.
He has investigated environmental violations across the country
Don't be
and
sleep,
is
nigga.
developing a technology network to deliver real-time data on water quality. He sees a shortage of clean water as the most pressing threat to America.
We don't live in a petroleum economy, we live in a water economy. When we lose it, we lose American life as we know it right now.
You lose all life.
Water is the substance upon which we
Without
depend.
water.
It is the foundation of life, it's the foundation of the planet. But all over the nation, and all over the world, in fact, both quantity and quality of water is in dire danger in the 21st century.
And this gonna take me into my next video. We're gonna discuss water. It was some entertaining shit, entertaining back and forth. Not even a back and forth, but an entertaining discussion revolving around water. So I'm gonna get into that next.
In the Western United States, the concept of water shortage, it's a headline in daily newspapers. In 2010, Governor Schwarzenegger told the state legislature in California that he would sign no more bills coming out of the state legislature until they revamped California's water laws. That's how severe it is. In the Midwest, you have the Ogallala Aquifer. There's this huge trapped underground sea of fresh water that was left behind by a glacier. You know, rainwater didn't create it. Rainwater doesn't replenish it. So as we exhaust it, which we're doing, we're taking away one of the single biggest supplies of fresh water in that region in the United States. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, if you go into any restaurant that sells shellfish, there's a sign on the wall that warns you that eating that shellfish may be hazardous to your health. If you go to San Francisco Bay and you sit on a dock, there'll be a sign on a piling at the pier warning you that if you take a fish out of San Francisco Bay and eat it, it may be hazardous to your health. There's a standing rule for every river and stream in the state of New York that if you eat more than one meal of fish per week, it could be hazardous to your health. The damage has gone so far that the very food that we could rely on those waterways is really too hazardous for us to eat.
Damn.
The foundation.
That's fucked up. When I was just stopping chicken, I was chilling out on chicken for about a couple weeks, right? So I just been on my watermelon fish shit. But damn, I don't even need to be fucking with this goddamn fish out here or the shrimp. Cold world.
Of civilization, which is our rivers and waterways, is starting to crumble.
All from pollution and
the society
shit.
that's built on top of it is
Pollution.
declining along
Fucking
with
up the fish and the seafood in the country.
Pollution is on the rise. We are over consuming water. We are not at the doorstep of a crisis. We are in a crisis. And if we don't take action immediately, the crisis will reach a point where we cannot recover from it. We can save millions of lives had we sensor technology to let us know as an early warning system what's in water.
What you're saying is getting to the kernel of one of my pet peeves, that just because we can measure stuff, we can control everything.
Can't control, bro.
Stories of the world's great empires all share one reoccurring theme: water. Wars have been fought over it, and losing it has meant the death of entire civilizations. Today, John Cronin believes water is in more demand and in shorter supply than ever before.
Water is as much a part of our history as wars and revolutions and art and music. But because we take it for granted, we don't see it as the foundation of society. If that foundation continues to crumble, the society on top of it is going to crumble along with it. This is not a new phenomenon. In fact, it's as old as civilization itself. In Mesopotamia, 6,000 years ago, where Iraq is today, the Sumerians invented irrigation using water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And just as we are careless with our use of water now, the Sumerians were careless then. In an attempt to feed their increasing population, they over-irrigated. The farmers wanted to reduce irrigation, but their leaders refused, because food was a source of power. The consequence for the Sumerians was the death of their civilization. The stakes are just as high for us today.
If not
Imagine
higher.
anything of consequence to the daily operation of the nation as a whole. If the White House ran out of water, everybody would have to leave the White House. If the offices of Congress ran out of water, everybody would have to leave Congress. The lights go out, you can sit at your desk. You run out of water, you pretty much have to leave. There's nothing for you to do. You can't use toilets, you have nothing to drink. When we talk about the idea of actually water stopping, you have to think about how it happens. One way is that we start running out of water and it all starts getting rationed. Now, rationing can mean a lot of things. It can mean that if you like to be clean every day, maybe you're not going to be clean every day. In Australia, you're not allowed to take a shower for more than 5 minutes.
Damn.
It's against the law.
Well, I mean, 5 minutes should be
It can
enough,
mean
but
the water you used to take out of your tap now has to be boiled every time you use it because we've had to resort to supplies of lesser quality. When you start reaching the point where your supply has declined so much that your everyday life gets rationed, that's a downward spiral because our population's increasing. If you go now to other parts of the world, you go to Singapore. Singapore is the canary in the mine for the rest of the world. Singapore's entire future now is based on recycling its sewage waste into drinking water. And you know who else is thinking about this right now? Australia, California, Arizona are thinking about the dramatic cultural change it's going to require to get their citizens to accept the idea that we may have to start recycling sewage waste for drinking water.
In 2007, the U.S. Geological Survey projected that at least 36 states would face water shortages within 5
I don't think niggas understand or even heard it. Let's go back right quick. Let's just go back. Sewage water for let's just go back. Where we at? Let's just go back.
Everybody would have to leave the White House. If the offices of Congress ran out of water, everybody would have to leave Congress. The lights go out, you can sit at your desk. You run out of water, you pretty much have to leave. There's nothing for you to do. You can't use toilets, you have nothing to drink.
Nothing.
When we talk about the idea of actually water stopping, you have to think about how it happens. One way is that we start running out of water and it all starts getting rationed. Now, rationing can mean a lot of things. It can mean that if you like to be clean every day, maybe you're not going to be clean every day. In Australia, you're not allowed to take a shower for more than 5 minutes. That's it. It's against the law.
It's against the law to take a shower longer than 5 minutes. So it's against the law to take a shower. So it's against the law to have the shower running for longer than 5 minutes. Are they monitoring your water usage time by minutes in Australia? That's crazy because my water take about 2 minutes to really get hot how I like it. So I got a 3-minute window to take a shower. Crazy.
It can mean the water you used to take out of your tap now has to be boiled every time you use it.
And do I get more time added if I'm doing like brushing my teeth in the motherfucking shower? Like the time do I get?
Because we've had to resort to supplies of lesser quality. When you start reaching the point,
yeah, I went over 5 minutes, but I was brushing my teeth too. I don't get an extra 2 minutes.
where your supply has declined so
water
much
don't get hot.
that your everyday life gets rationed.
Don't take
That's a
cold
downward spiral because our population's increasing. If you
I'd
go
rather have a shower
now to
hot
other parts
than
of the
get
world,
cold.
you go to Singapore. Singapore is the canary in the mine for the rest of the world. Singapore's entire future now is based on recycling its sewage waste into drinking water. And you know who else is thinking about this right now? Australia, California.
Hold on. That's what we were looking at. All right.
Is the canary in the mine for the rest of the world. Singapore's entire future now is based on recycling its sewage waste into drinking water.
And that's Singapore that has to change their sewer water into drinking water.
And you know who else is thinking about this right now? Australia, California,
damn,
Arizona,
damn,
are thinking about the dramatic cultural change it's going to require to get their citizens to accept the idea that we may have to start recycling sewage waste for drinking water.
And y'all know they already engineering chicken in tanks. And if you didn't know, they have approved for steaks to be made out of your shit. Yeah. If you didn't know. Look it up. Look that shit up, bitch. For real. Some of that steak the new steak you might be eating. I don't even fuck with that shit. I can't even fuck with it no more after hearing that shit.
In 2007,
that shit like
the U.S.
That shit fuck that shit. Hell no.
U.S. Geological Survey projected that at least 36 states would face water shortages
Eat
within
from the
5
earth,
years.
man.
That means some of these states are already facing challenges. Cronin, however, is worried not just about the
Lord, it's
quantity
surrounded
of
by
the
water. How the fuck?
but the quality.
19.5 million residents of the United States.
Hold on, let's go back to
get
that
sick
map.
from bacteria, viruses, dramatic cultural change.
However, is worried not just
You telling me Mississippi ain't on the list and California considering it and they ain't even goddamn there.
already facing
Alaska
challenges. Cronin, however, is worried not just about the quantity of the water, but the quality.
Quality over quantity.
Million residents of the United States get sick from bacteria, viruses, and parasites every year. It comes from pollution of drinking water with human wastes. This is frightening in the 21st century because it's one of the oldest problems civilization deals with. Keeping human waste separate from the water that we drink. Had a flu cause those kind of consequences, every medical expert and authority in the country would be put on alert because of it. And if we do not stop that pollution, we are facing rates of illnesses that are going to increase, and the equivalent of a pandemic.
The waste dumped by sewage treatment plants into our oceans and rivers not only can contaminate drinking water with bacteria and viruses, but also with chemicals from the beverages we drink and the medicines we take.
One of the most alarming discoveries about pollution in the last decade is that there are things that we use every day that sewage treatment plants do not remove, that are starting to show up in the waters of the United States. So we're starting to find caffeine in fish. The coffee flows through us. It goes down our toilets. It goes to the sewage treatment plant, which is not equipped to remove caffeine. The caffeine flows out the sewage treatment plant into the nearby river. The caffeine goes into the fish. Maybe caffeine doesn't turn out to be a problem, but maybe other things do. Those plants were not designed to remove exotic chemicals, pharmaceuticals, prescription drugs that we take, or take a flu or some sort of virus that starts transporting itself throughout water supplies of the United States. And we wake up one day literally with an epidemic.
Cronin makes a strong case for freshwater being the foundation of our society. He feels we need technological innovation allowing us to measure precisely what is in our water at any given moment.
So we start meeting needs. And I'll give you an example. I can go on any cell phone and I can tell you the UV index and relative humidity in almost real time of any location on the planet. There's nobody who can tell you in real time what's in the glass of water you're drinking. We can save millions of lives had we sensor technology to let us know as an early warning system what's in water. You know, how do you even create that world?
What you're saying is getting to the kernel of one of my pet peeves, that just because we can measure stuff, we can control everything. It's incredibly grandiose and foolish. What I'm seeing in our culture these days is what I call a disease of too much magic. And I think it's perhaps a very fortunate thing that the human race is facing what I would call maybe a reset of its activity, not necessarily a collapse, but let's call it a reset.
James Howard Kunstler, born 1948 in New York City, an investigative journalist and author. His specialty since the 1970s has been the oil industry. Kunstler has lived through an oil embargo enforced by foreign suppliers. Now, he is convinced the planet will soon impose a greater one that will likely lead to the collapse of society as we know it.
And when I was a young reporter, starting out in the early 70s, I covered the OPEC oil embargo of 1973, and it made a huge impression on me. You started to see lines form at the gas stations. People were unable to get to work. You know, I have this vivid memory of somehow I managed to get a full tank of gas, and I wanted to drive down to New York City to see a girl. And I drove down the New York State Thruway, and I was the only car on the Thruway for about 150 miles. And it was like the day the earth stood still. It made a big impression on me to see how fragile the everyday world that we'd gotten accustomed to really was. That was 40 years ago. I think that the energy crunch of the 21st century is going to be much different, much harsher, have permanent repercussions that are going to thunder through the lives of generations to come. We're heading into uncharted territory of civilization. I think the people of the United States a generation from now are going to be astounded at how we squandered the wealth of the 20th century. I think the people of the future are going to look back on us in wonder and nausea at what we've done. They're going to be left holding the bag, and it's going to be a very empty bag.
Fucked up what we doing to our kids, man. That's why I ain't even want to have kids. Shit fucked up.
History is a graveyard of fallen empires, and today there are those
Not
who
over
say
here.
America's in danger of suffering the same fate. Among them, James Kunstler is convinced diminishing oil supplies will play a critical role in our downfall.
Peak oil is the moment in history when an individual oil field or a region or a nation produces the most oil it ever will. The U.S. had its moment of peak oil in 1970. That was 40 years ago, when we produced 10 million barrels a day, and we're down to 5 million barrels a day now. The problem is when the world hits peak oil, and that's where we're at now. We're on that bumpy slope down that's going to get rougher and rougher. The oil story really starts around 1860. In the USA, we are the first nation that ramps up multi-layered, comprehensive oil industry. And it's been normal for many generations of Americans now. So it's hard for us to imagine us not having oil. But in fact, peak oil happened in America in 1970. "40 years ago, America produced the most oil that it will ever produce in a given year, which was around 10 million barrels a day. And ever since then, it's been going down. America made up for its problem of peak oil and of entering the arc of depletion by importing oil from other countries. The problem for the world is that once the world passes their production peak, we're not going to be able to import oil from other solar systems. The assumption is that the downslope is a gentle downslope, that we're just sort of gliding into depletion. But I think that really misrepresents the reality of the situation. The real story is going to be how the major complex systems of daily life begin to destabilize and mutually reinforce each other's instabilities and failures as we get into trouble with this peak oil problem.
We consume 20 million barrels of oil each day in the United States, most of which is imported. And every day, our demand for oil increases. Oil, however, is a finite resource. The U.S. government is aware of the problem.
The U.S. Department of Energy hired a scientific consulting firm run by a guy named Robert Hirsch. The Hirsch report was published in 2005. Hirsch reported that we were indeed facing a peak oil predicament that was going to rock our world, that was going to change all the terms of everyday life in advanced societies and deprive us of many of the comforts, conveniences, amenities, and necessities that we had come to take for granted. The Hirsch report was buried by the Department of Energy because they saw no way that the American public could deal with the idea that this way of life might be threatened. The Hirsch report was really rather bad news. It was telling the USA that we were facing an imminent crisis. America didn't want to hear it. It was too painful.
The Hirsch report projects that oil production worldwide will peak either in this decade or almost certainly by 2030. The report also states that the economic, social, and political costs will be unprecedented.
The peak oil story is not really about running out of oil. It's about what happens to all these complex systems that we depend on.
What was that shit about? They showed a whole little mini movie scene. I'll be walking, going in the pockets and taking a lighter. That's all he gave a fuck. Boy, that's what we. Boy, that shit.
On for
Some
everyday
niggas
life.
already know that's fucked up.
The way we produce our food, that's one system. And that mainly means industrial agriculture, where you're applying a lot of oil and gas byproducts to huge factory farms and producing cheese doodles and chicken, Pepsi-Cola or hogs or whatever it is. That's how we do farming. That's how we feed ourselves in America. That's going to be coming to an end, and probably fairly shortly. And it'll be a huge problem. You can't imagine anything more destabilizing to a culture than people going hungry. The way we make things, buy things, sell things, move them around, that's all going to change. There's been really one model for the last...
There's really a lot of overeating too. Like, if you eat correctly, eat from the earth, fast, like really, technically, you really only need to eat once a day. For real. And it'll cut down on the sickness, times you get sick and all that shit. You feel me? And a lot of you niggas can go without eating for a couple days, nigga. You'll be all right, nigga. Nigga, when your body eat up them bad cells, nigga, your body can live off bad cells and your shit for probably a month, nigga. At least. Some of you niggas. Probably a lot of you niggas.
Last 30 years or so, and that's national chain retail, giant corporations moving massive amounts of stuff. The semi-trucks that are incessantly circulating around the interstate highways, they pick the stuff up in San Pedro, California, and they schlep it across the nation to Philadelphia. And that's how we do commerce in America. It's normal for people. You know, they love the Walmart. It's become, enshrined as an institution now, like, apple pie and motherhood. There's a lot of fantasizing that's going on right now. A lot of wishing that's going on in America right now, that we're going to run this stuff by other means, that we're going to run all the cars, and that we're going to run Walt Disney World and the interstate highway system and Walmart and the U.S. Army and suburbia on something other than oil. It's not going to happen. We're going to be very disappointed about that.
We will develop alternatives to fossil fuels, but many experts believe we may never develop replacements. Oil is simply more potent and costs less to produce than any other energy source, at least for the foreseeable future. We are not the first society in history to face the depletion of its most precious resource. We just have to hope we are the first to overcome it.
There's that old aphorism that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And, we see kind of similar things happening in a different way.
I ain't never heard that shit. And I've been rhyming all my life. History don't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I ain't never heard that shit, man. I got so many
Other cultures have gotten into trouble with their resources and with their political response to their own resource problems. We're like ancient Rome with baseball and pizza. Look at what happened to Easter Island. They were a Polynesian culture on a remote island in the Pacific. If you go there now, what you'll find is a treeless island populated with giant stone heads left behind by the Easter Islanders. But the island wasn't always barren. It used to be covered in trees, and the trees were to the Easter Islanders what oil is to us today, their primary resource. They used it for all the important daily needs of life, and their population grew to, we estimate, about maybe 20,000 people at the height of this culture. And before you know it, there's not a whole lot of wood left. And their population starts to crash, and they get pretty desperate. There's a lot of evidence that they actually started getting into cannibalism in the final florid phase of this collapse. They start building all these immense stone monuments. They may have been an attempt to appease the gods, to allow them to get some kind of resource back. I think you can state categorically that as a society becomes more fearful and desperate and economically stressed, that the delusional thinking increases. I think it's a kind of thing that the human brain does in a state of...
It's a lot of delulu out here.
Desperation.
A lot of desperate delulu. A lot of this shit, man. Don't be sleep out here, bro. just because you want to believe some shit that you know ain't that. That shit ain't that. It ain't that, bro. Don't be sleep out here, nigga.
A world without fossil fuels would be a dark, difficult place. There are some who believe that we may still be able to find solutions if we act quickly. Many, like Kunstler, know that the consequences for not finding alternatives will have repercussions for generations to come.
I think the people of the future are going to look back on us in wonder and nausea at what we've done. They're going to be inhabiting a planet whose resources have been largely depleted, and we're going to be back to living off the true solar energy of the planet, you know, the stuff that comes in from the sunshine every day. They're going to be left holding the bag, and it's going to be a very empty bag. I think the future is going to be difficult for America. I think it's going to be a surprisingly austere place, struggling to stay warm in the winter, struggling to feed themselves or have any kind of a gainful occupation, living among the detritus and the salvage of the industrial age and trying to make something of the pieces that are left. America is going to have to contract and probably to some extent retreat back into our corner of the world, the Western Hemisphere, with lower expectations for being able to influence and moderate the behavior of other people in the world, and a reduced ability to control the great issues of world economy and global politics. We're so psychologically invested in all of the mythology of what we became in the 20th century. The greatest power that the world has ever seen and the greatest economy that the world has ever seen, and it was quite a trip, and it was a lot of fun, and it was exciting and comfortable and convenient, sometimes joyous and thrilling. And now we're done with that. It's over.
James Kunstler is convinced nothing can prevent peak oil. But he and others are equally certain that the havoc it creates will be lessened if we can make changes now.
For me, the most important thing is to stimulate and liberate local food production, to do anything possible to help people grow food where they live.
But how do you grow your own local food if you're living in a high-rise apartment?
It's happening all over the world right now. There are rooftop gardens, there are window box gardens, vacant lots in major metropolitan areas are being converted to community-supported agriculture.
Enough to live on?
Enough to feed more people than will be fed otherwise. I offer no magic bullets that will allow everybody to live the way we have been living. I started as a cop. My job is to save as many lives as possible. This is a triage emergency situation.
When I listen to you, in a sense, you're all human scale problems. For example, water shortage, economic collapse, oil shortage. But the problems I'm concerned with, in a sense, are almost post-human. I see this century that the technologies will allow massively intelligent machines. They could actually contribute to some of these solutions. But it's a two-edged sword, right? These machines that humanity could build would be so complicated that we could not understand them. And therefore, we could not predict how they might behave towards us. Maybe they would become very unfriendly to us. They estimate that it's going to occur in the 2040s. And most people watching this program today will be alive when this happens. They may decide that human beings are so inferior to them, they may wipe us out like a mosquito.
Some of the greatest threats to the future of America are economic collapse, water shortage and contamination, and oil depletion. Each is an evil we know. But there is one looming danger that may overshadow them all. One with the potential to wipe mankind off the face of the earth. Professor Hugo de Garis, born 1947 in Sydney, Australia, designs artificial intelligences. His research is leading the way toward the evolution of self-aware robots. He sees a future in which artificial intelligences are far more powerful than the entire human race combined.
It's only a question of time now before humanity can build artificial brains that are far more intelligent than human beings. So this is a huge issue, which I believe will eclipse any other human issue this century. They call this species dominance. People have been saying for a long time, well, look, robots are just around the corners, but that corner's been around for 50 odd years, so when's it going to happen?
Arthur the Robot, the second mechanical man built by the Oakland, California high school youth. Arthur represents all of a month's after-school tinkering.
Most people have probably heard of something called Moore's Law. He said in the 60s that the number of transistors on a chip doubles every year and a half or so. So it's largely because of that phenomenon, that trend, that it's more or less now that there's enough capacity in electronics to actually make these artificial brains. The South Korean government, they will aim to put a home robot, a useful, intelligent home robot, in every Korean household by 2020. And Bill Gates is on record as saying by 2030, the home robot industry will be one of the biggest and richest in the world. And why is that? Well, I mean, imagine you really had a machine that could do all the household tasks. It would be so useful that you would be prepared to spend big money on it.
The rapid acceleration of technological innovation in recent years may soon enable us to create robots that look and behave like humans.
So imagine in the 2020s, you get a phone call from your neighbor, and your neighbor tells you, hey, come over, come and look at my new home robot. So you knock on the door of your neighbor, and his home robot answers and cracks a joke. And you're amazed. My God, the vocabulary of this thing is about double, triple what my home robot has. And it's even cynical. It has a sense of humor. My God, wow, impressive. So 2 weeks later, you rush off and buy yourself the next model, right? I mean, the same way today we do with our iPods and iPads and so on. So imagine you do this several times. Each upgrade that you do, your home robot's getting smarter and smarter. The human IQ level, let's say it's here, and the robot IQ level, let's say, is here, but it then becomes clear to everybody that there's a trend, right? That gap, that difference between human IQ and robot IQ, that gap is lessening. It's getting smaller and smaller as the years pass. Right? So it'll become obvious to everybody that it's only a question of time before the home robot intelligence level catches up to human level.
Scientists have long predicted what they call the singularity. This theory states that artificial intelligence will eventually develop self-awareness and begin to think and act independently.
So this came out on YouTube 3 years ago, but I feel like this video way older. But that's some information that's been known. They've been put it in movies.
Control. DeGauss believes that when the singularity arrives, mankind will for the first time face competition as the planet's dominant species.
This whole idea of species dominance, it sounds like science fiction to most people because today's machines are not intelligent. But as a professional brain builder myself, and I know there are thousands of guys working on this problem now, how to make artificial intelligence. The progress level in neuroscience, the supercomputers that today have an equal bit processing rate as the human brain. All these factors, you put them together, and it makes the idea of species dominance very real. I mean, make the analogy in the 30s, you had the nuclear physicists saying a bomb was coming, and everybody ridiculed them because it sounded ridiculous.
Man, this nigga get high. He got too much information. He knows some shit. He get high. You could just tell. I wasn't looking at this shit for a minute. I was just organizing some shit on my Twitch. Man, he's stressed. Look at him. He is stressed. He got some knowledge, but that shit stressing him out to the point he has to get high. Trust me. He probably got an 8-ball on him.
One bomb, one city, that's nuts. Okay? But it happened within a mere 12 years or so from the first prediction. People will start asking all kinds of obvious questions like, well, are these machines going to become as intelligent as human beings? Should we try to stop it? Could we stop it?
You can't if you're gonna keep creating.
Bill Gates is right.
Only way to stop it is to stop
2030,
creating it.
the home robot industry will be worth literally trillions of dollars a year, right? So enormous economic momentum. How do you stop that? And then you've got the military momentum, because in the time frame we're talking about, the 2030s, probably what's the dominant political reality of those times? Well, I suggest it will probably be the global rivalry between the US and China. Imagine you're the Minister of Defense. You will not have the luxury to allow the other guy to develop systems that create more intelligent soldier robots and military systems.
So I was going up this parking garage for some shit, this live session for my sister and shit. And it was across the street from the courthouse down here. And I felt like, I'm like, man, why this shit got... I just felt like it was backwards, like going up to the roof for the, you know what I'm saying? For the, I feel like it was bad. Like, why are we going up in the left lane? It just I don't know. It just kind of, it could have been just the structure of the motherfucking architect. How would it, whatever. I don't know. I was like, what the fuck this shit on my
than the other country. Even if the public gets really alarmed, the national security type arguments will ensure this development will go on.
The benefits and conveniences offered by highly intelligent robots are undeniable, and it is easy to imagine how quickly we will become accustomed to their presence. But the pace of their evolution will be so rapid that DeGarris wonders just how long before the servant becomes the master.
So our artificial brains will become more and more like our brains, like natural biological brains. And you need to remember, these artificial brains, they're thinking 1,000,000 times faster than we are. Whereas our brains, our biological brains, they're operating at chemical speeds. Electronic brains think at the speed of light. So can you imagine if one of these brains had human-level intelligence, it could do a PhD in minutes, which is pretty scary. So effectively, there's no limit to their capacity.
But it's all about using it to our advantage. This is what it's supposed to be for, to make lives easier on the human. You feel me? So it's all about how you engineer the robots for their usage. You just can't engineer the robots to have too much power. The artificial intelligence will take over if you grant it too much power.
Capacities. They could be, well, not only thinking much faster, but virtually unlimited memory.
And that's what it seemed like. They want to grant it too much power.
Knowledge into one artificial brain.
And for the wrong reason. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
they could do evolutionary type experiments on parts of themselves and then look at the results. And if the results were good, they could then incorporate those new results into themselves and restructure themselves, and all at the speed of light. So they would be almost godlike, these creatures. I give them a name. I call them Artillect. That's short for artificial.
Robots could actually be the beginning to world peace, but whoever controls the robots will have the power, and that's how the world works. And that's when wars happen and wars occur and all that other shit, because people got their own information. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about the people that's empowered, and shit, if they want to go where they move, in layman's terms.
Intellect, because that's what they'd be. They'd be artificial minds. The potential of these machines is so vastly greater than what we are as humans. It's possible that in a highly advanced form, they may decide, for whatever reason, maybe for reasons we don't even understand as humans, they may decide that human beings are so inferior to them, they may treat us as a pest. Imagine a mosquito lands on my arm, and I'm human, right? And that's a mosquito, and I go,
Natural
but I'm
reaction.
human. I don't give a damn.
It's a natural
So we would
reaction.
have no idea what their attitudes towards us as a species would be. They may decide to get rid of all the oxygen because it rusts their circuitry or something, right? And not care about the consequences of that decision, their action towards us.
Man, you cannot engineer the robot to be as a human though, because then they have human capabilities. You know what I'm saying? That bitch could shoot you. Like, yeah, all right, I got a robot in this bitch for security. Yeah, that bitch like me. That bitch could work with guns. That bitch know my guns better than me. You know what I'm saying? That bitch got down. What? That bitch teach me some shit about my gun. Man, what? And then they was talking about the robots developing feeling like emotions, and that is the worst shit that could be. That's the worst shit possible that could happen. Talking about their IQ level, and they IQ level go with their emotions, and like they develop. And don't let you have a female engineer robot.
Oops, an accident. Bad aim or something.
I ain't gonna go there.
But
I ain't
was
gonna
it an
go.
accident? Arthur ain't talking. Seems suspicious, though, when the controls are just about foolproof. But Arthur the robot's a harmless fellow, and uh-oh, here he comes. This is where we go.
Worrying about hostile robots may seem premature, especially when compared to the immediate threats of peak oil and water shortage. But even these crises may, in time, seem minor relative to the realities of a world dominated by artificial super beings.
Something that really scared me was the notion that with the enhancement of AI, that human beings could become God. And quite frankly, that scares me to death.
The resource and money problems that we face are so severe that I think that they're going to put this kind of activity out of business before it really ramps up.
But here's the thing, though. No matter what any one of us talk about, it's going to survive if there's a marketplace for it. And the marketplace is defined by the people who are out
The
there.
marketplace that you're talking about is a collective agreement between people about what reality consists of. And that reality is changing very swiftly.
Hugo, I'm especially fascinated with your work that from what you described about how machines are going to be trillions of times smarter than we are, and they're going to be able to solve all these great problems. It sounds like all the problems the rest of us are concerned about, the machines are going to fix them all. In my own case, I'm very concerned that, we're going to wake up tomorrow and, 6 or 8 major American cities are going to be nuked off the face of the earth. And there's absolutely no reason why this couldn't happen. That sudden apocalypse. Luis Alvarez.
And look up the great fires of the early of the 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. It was a major fire. Every city in America, you could look it up. Every state, you could look it up. Between 1880, between 1880 and 1917, around that area.
Who designed the triggering
Each and every motherfucking city in America and state
mechanisms for the Hiroshima bombs. He said what people don't understand is the hardest thing isn't to make bombs go off, it's to keep them from going off. Most experts say that nuclear terror strikes are
like the nigga said, history don't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's my first thing.
going to happen. The nuclear bomb fuel's been available too long. So as long as the nuclear bomb fuel's there, somebody is going to steal some. They're going to cobble one or more nukes together, and they're going to set them off. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of time.
Damn.
I think one of the problems facing the United States today is people either feel too secure in the United States, too secure in their futures, or they just don't care. They're apathetic. I think it's terribly important to get this information out there. And I hate to say it, but to wake people up.
Finna make me roll up again, man. Golly. Fuck it. Roll up.
The America we know today could look very different tomorrow as converging forces threaten not only our prosperity, but ultimately our very survival.
I'm supposed to roll my Marley.
Most believe the crisis will unfold gradually, but some believe it could happen overnight.
Definitely can. It is a possibility now.
The greatest threat to America today is nuclear terrorists. It's far too easy for them to steal the nuclear bomb fuel, to cobble crude nuclear devices together, and to set them off in major American cities.
Robert Gleason, born 1945, Michigan City, Indiana, is the executive editor of Tor Forge Books. There he has published the writing of former members of the Pentagon, CIA, NSA, and FBI. What these men have told him has alerted him to a devastating threat.
I think one of the problems facing the United States today is people either feel too secure in the United States, too secure in their futures, or they just don't care. They're apathetic. I think it's terribly important to get this information out there. And I hate to say it, but to wake people up, to let them know that America's exalted position in the world could end in a heartbeat overnight. Nuclear weapons, particularly thermonuclear weapons, are man-made suns detonated on the Earth. It is a miniature star.
Hold up. That nigga said man-made suns detonated on the Earth. That is what a nuclear weapon is. A man-made sun detonated, set off on the Earth. Whatever area that bitch in, whatever area that man-made sun is detonated and set off.
Except in this case, whereas our sun gives us life, this man-made star brings death. Too secure in the United States, too secure in their futures, or they just don't care. They're apathetic. I think it's terribly important to get this information out there. And I hate to say it, but to wake people up, to let them know that
don't be sleeping out here,
America's
nigga.
exalted position in the world could end in a heartbeat overnight.
In a fucking heartbeat, nigga. Why you sleep, nigga?
Nuclear
Overnight,
weapons,
in your
particularly
dream.
thermonuclear weapons, are man-made suns detonated on the Earth. It is a miniature star. Except in this case, whereas our sun gives us life, this man-made star brings death. One of the things about terrorist nukes is that they're surprisingly easy to construct and set off if you have the nuclear bomb fuel. If you get the equipment from an old winery or an old dairy, in 6 months you can manufacture your own nuclear reprocessor. Within 1 month, you will have reprocessed enough nuclear waste that you will have bomb-grade plutonium, and you can set off the Nagasaki bomb with it. Another way to do it is just to go into one of these.
That nigga said in Nagasaki. We not just finna speed past that. Man, look that. Fuck it. Niggas don't know.
Nuclear storage sites and steal the actual bomb fuel itself.
Niggas don't
As
know.
we know,
It's
it's
all right.
shockingly easy to do it even in the
You could be
United
asleep.
States. At Los Alamos, there was a study done in which they disguised some
You
former
don't want to be
special
asleep. You can
forces
look up
guys,
everything you down.
and they
You know, you
wanted to
look it
see
up.
if they could steal some bomb fuel. The mock terrorists came in with a Home Depot garden cart and trundled out enough nuclear bomb fuel to build a bomb. That is in the United States of America. If we can't secure our own nuclear bomb fuel, how is Pakistan going to do it? How's
Do your research. That's all I'm gonna say. Do your research if you really Do your research.
India going to do it? How is Russia going to do it? Countries that are just rife with all kinds of bribery. Michael Shore, who at the CIA ran the bin Laden unit for years, said bin Laden has always been obsessed with obtaining nuclear weapons. Al-Qaeda's been obsessed with it. We do know that there's been some years where the Russians have caught 500 people in a single year trying to steal nuclear materials out of Russia. What percentage of that is the total? Is there 5,000? Is there 50,000? All we know is that the people that got caught. How about the people that didn't get caught?
While military.
Shout out to all the people that did get caught, man. You know what to do, man. Handle your business. You know what it is. Nigga.
Grade nuclear weapons are unavailable to terrorist groups.
And I ain't talking about what the fuck he talking about. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to them niggas, man. Hustles on a mission every day. Hey, man. Take care of you and yours. Handle your business how you supposed to. Man up, nigga.
Analysts believe a crude but still powerful bomb is within their ability to build and detonate.
It could happen any day. Say it's Wednesday, 9 a.m., one of our big cities. A van pulls into a car park in a crowded neighborhood. Inside that van are the terrorists. They have the simplest improvised nuclear device you can build. A 10-kiloton gun-type bomb, the same size as the Hiroshima bomb. Depending on how complex they've made it, they can get away with having acquired as little as 26 pounds of highly enriched uranium. An amount.
What?
Security analysts believe a crude but still powerful bomb is within their ability to build and detonate.
It could happen any day. Say it's Wednesday, 9 a.m., one of our big cities. A van pulls into a car park in a crowded neighborhood. Inside that van are the terrorists. They have the simplest improvised nuclear device you can build. A 10-kiloton gun-type bomb, the same size as the Hiroshima bomb. Depending on how complex they've made it, they can get away with having acquired as little as 26 pounds of highly enriched uranium. An amount like that is not out of the question. The blast zone for a bomb that size is about a square mile. Just think a minute about what might be in that radius. For one thing, you have public schools, bus terminals and train stations, literally packed with commuters. Museums with collections of the most famous art in the entire world.
A square mile is
and of course,
large
tourists are everywhere on the streets. You have office buildings, theaters, hotels, public libraries, restaurants, people's homes. Depending on where you are, there could be 1 million people in the area, an area that is about to become ground zero. In a few minutes, all of them, everything.
If you don't know what ground zero means, that means flattened, leveled, disintegrated, destroyed.
Was in the square mile. Will be gone.
We face a cruel irony of history. The risk of a nuclear confrontation between nations has gone down, but the risk of nuclear attack has gone up. Just the smallest amount of plutonium, about the size of an apple, could kill and injure hundreds of thousands of innocent people. Terrorist networks such as Al-Qaeda have tried to acquire the material for a nuclear weapon, and if they ever succeeded, they would surely use it. Were they to do so, it would be a catastrophe for the world.
The immediate blast damage from a nuclear attack would be catastrophic, but the long-term repercussions would be far worse. The landscape of America would be changed forever. The implications are so severe, most choose not even to consider them.
talked to a number of military analysts that worked at the Pentagon and at the War College. They claim the Pentagon really doesn't study the subject of nuclear terrorism. They couldn't find any studies, classified or unclassified, that the Pentagon's ever done. I think it's because nuclear terrorism nullifies everything we know about military strategy and tactics. It is the reductio ad absurdum of warfare.
22nd Street Prototype.
Since 9/11, the threat of terrorism has become a daily fact of life for every American. Most perceive it as a problem beyond their power to control. But that may prove small comfort to our children and the generations to come.
Bomb strikes. And if a terrorist took out 8 cities in one day, you have all the great apocalypses rolled up into one. You talk about water shortages, there's no water. You talk about energy shortages, there is no energy. It's the elephant in the living room. We refuse to address it. We refuse to talk about it. I think future generations will look back on our apathy and inaction and be horrified.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Unfortunately, if I get blown up in a nuclear attack, there's not much I can do about it. What I like to do as an American is take action with my own hands.
What about our practical problems of the future?
Well, you know, it's nice.
What I like to do as a man, as a human being, is take action with my own hands. As a man. See, people like to label themselves as whatever, but as a man, as a human being, nigga, man, look, as a God, take action in your own hands.
Nice to say that water is the pressing problem, oil is, money is. The problem is they're all going to come together at once. And whichever wins the horse race and gets there first, you know, who knows? Maybe it'll be nuclear terrorism. Maybe we run out of water. Maybe there's a financial collapse. But I don't think there's ever been a time in American history where we saw so many apocalyptic problems on our time horizon in the near future.
With problems of such immense scope and consequence, the question is whether these men can come to any sort of consensus about which of these problems will befall us first.
There are a number of real big game changers out there, and they seem to be converging. These are amazing problems that are going to come back and bite us very hard, and they're going to bite us all at the same time like a pack of wolves.
America stands at a crossroads unprecedented in over 200 years as a nation. These men have described their versions of the future, each one terrifying and each one seemingly possible. Now they must decide which is the gravest threat to the United States and what can we do to prevent it.
We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about a lot of different things. It would be interesting if we could each talk about what we consider to be the most immediate pressing problems, and also, you know, perhaps what could be done about them. And who knows, maybe at the end of it, we might reach some kind of a consensus. Hugo, what would you?
So if you ask me which particular problem is most pressing, I guess it'd be John's. It's water. Because it's primary, right? It's basic. So if we can't solve that problem immediately, then God, all the rest just collapses. I mean, imagine it. You turn on the faucet and nothing comes out. I was thinking, my God, if no water comes out of the faucet, I can't survive 6 months or 6 years. I can't survive 6 hours.
Man, listen, oh my, like, he ain't, where I'm at, right? It was a water issue. They cut the water off around, they had to cut the water off around 12. I didn't notice until like 2 in the morning. Yeah, 12 a.m. I ain't noticed till like 2 in the morning. So I'm like, what the fuck? This shit ain't never happened ever. Where I'm at, been here for about a decade. Shit ain't never fucking happened at this time. And I know I ain't never fucking had no type of issue like this at 2 in the fucking morning. All right, cool. Man, this shit was off for 24 hours. Man, when I tell you, bro, a nigga definitely finna goddamn find some. We definitely finna get our own shit. We finna get land. You gotta get land, probably all that shit. You know, like you said, you get comfortable with it sometimes because whatever. But fuck that. Get you land property. You know, you gotta goddamn educate yourself properly. You know, if you get land outside of America, you could probably keep that shit forever, depending on where you get it at, where you acquire it. You purchase that land, that's yours forever, and you can pass it down generations. The more you know.
You know, one of the first casualties of running out of water is there's no water for sanitation. Disease starts to spread. You start getting plagues that, you know, we thought we'd eliminated a long time ago. The world is running out of water very rapidly. And the population's proliferating, the consumption's proliferating, and the water sources are shrinking. I really don't know what the answer to that problem is.
Fact is, we live in a water economy. We more than we live in a petroleum economy. Water runs the world, but its misuse is also the source of a downward cycle of poverty, disease, and human suffering and political instability. That's all here right now. There is no one thing to do. There is no magic bullet that solves our water problems for a number of reasons. One is water problems are profoundly local. We have to look at what comes out of our tap as being more precious than oil, being more precious than a gold standard, being more precious than our currency, being something that we have to immediately protect, like right now, right this second, and not just be worrying about a nuclear holocaust that's maybe a year or 2 years or 10 years down the road. This is an everyday threat. We've kind of forgotten about water. We're under the impression that our laws have taken care of all that. They have not. The public doesn't know the size of that failure. That awareness will result in an expectation and a demand. The American public will respond if they have the knowledge.
Right, and that's what it's about. Just about motherfuckers responding and giving you more knowledge, creating a positive impact today and later. Sponsored by dividendsapparel.com. Remember, whatever you do, do it capital. Hey, hustle on a mission every day, man.
This message is clear. Protect the nation's water supply today or suffer dire consequences tomorrow. But not everyone agrees this is the most pressing concern.
I think we're facing multiple crises. I still believe that they will manifest first in the financial and currency system, and that does have implications depending on how governments respond for international trade and availability of resources and our supply chain. I mean, there are some core assumptions of our economic system that have to be re-examined, and I think that's happening now. I think 2008, Lehman Brothers, we came this close to a total unraveling. And people at the highest levels are thinking about how to avoid that in the future and how to redesign our financial system and maybe our economic system so that doesn't happen again. In order to get to Hugo's problem of artificial intelligent Terminator guys 50 years from now, we need to make it through the next 10 years. I think the biophysical crises of energy and water and other things like that are going to first manifest in social crises.
Michael, what do you see as the most pressing concrete problems?
1 in 7 Americans now is below the poverty line. 1 in 8 families is on food stamps. Those numbers are increasing. 30, 40 million unemployed, depending upon who's counting the statistics.
Right, because the numbers definitely increased since this motherfucking documentary. I'll sit down with them.
The people are hurting, and they're hurting as a result of an economic collapse, which is exacerbated and compounded by resource shortages, peak oil, energy, fresh water, everything else. I see signs of a shift in human consciousness. I see signs, very clear signs of a global awakening. Many, many millions of people understanding this. The moves to relocalize food production, to start growing food where people live, to relocalize your support groups close to where you live. Is really
get foods that have seeds. Get your vegetables, fruits that have seeds. You can grow your own food if you have land. If your family has land, they're not utilizing it. You can take advantage and holler at them and grow food for the family, together, for yourself, because they don't even give a fuck sometimes. You can just use that shit to grow your own shit. They ain't giving a fuck. They don't probably even eat that shit that you trying to grow anyway. They motherfucking hooked on the motherfucking poison from McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, and all the other bullshit. Stupid ass.
Really a worldwide movement.
Well, I'm not persuaded that most of the major problems can be ranked in the order of importance. I think that they're all going to redound on each other. My central animating idea is that there are several competing fiascos that threaten to put us out of business as an advanced industrial civilization.
While there seems to be some consensus that our debt-based society and the world's water issues are the greatest problems we face, there is less agreement on what can be done to stave off a potential collapse.
There are a number of real big game changers out there, and they seem to be converging. The energy narrative is pretty clear. The banking problems we have right now, the shortage of capital, the failures of governance and the rule of law in our financial system, you know. These are amazing problems that are going to come back and bite us very hard. And they're going to bite us all at the same time like a pack of wolves. And there are three things that I would recommend that we can do. The first thing is that we can reestablish the rule of law in our banking and financial practice. Second thing I would propose is we need to direct our dwindling resources into the task of rebuilding local economies. The third thing that I think we need to do is rebuild the conventional railroad system in the United States, and we should do that right away. And if we don't do it, I'm not sure that there will be anything that will physically allow the United States to hang together as a culture, a people, and a nation.
We've mentioned the collapse of advanced industrial.
Shout out to the railroad, man. My granddaddy did that for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Railroad Foundation in the beginning, I guess.
Industrial civilization several times.
But that might be just some old nigga thing.
And my research of historical civilizations suggests that our population will, in the end, be more resilient than some people give credit to. The average person needs to start thinking about a future where instead of more every year, there might be the same every year or less every year. I agree that we need to relocalize our food systems. We also need to relocalize the production of a lot of basic needs. In effect, we need to insource where we have been outsourcing because of efficiency and profits around the world. I think Buy American really makes sense because the things that we need to make and that we need for our lives should be made locally.
I think a consensus is emerging that relocalization is a solution to many problems in terms of food production, resource usage, and anything else. Also in terms of starting a local currency. Anything you can do to be sustainable close to where you live. There's no universal solution, but I'm seeing an agreement on that. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Mike, but I would also add that, in the spirit of going with the flow of history and circumstance, that this is where we have to go anyway. And that the society's being self-organizing and emergent, that's our destination anyway, even if we have to be dragged kicking and screaming to it.
Yes.
It seems to me again, it's really tempting to say that all of these things are interrelated. History teaches us only one thing: the way things are today are not the way they're going to be tomorrow.
All I'm convinced of is we have very little time to do anything, and perhaps time may be a resource we have not addressed.
And time is the most valuable thing. Time is the most valuable thing on this earth. Your time is more valuable than money, gold, diamonds, that bitch that you be chasing, that pussy that you be motherfucking crying over trying to kill a nigga back. Your time is worth more than that, my brother. Matter of fact, it was only a couple minutes more left on this shit. I'm gonna wrap it up. It was about 7 minutes more. You know, I'm a 7. We gonna end it like that. Fuck that. You know what I'm saying? Hey, whatever you do, make sure you do it capital. Create a positive impact today and later. This is the Lit House, Home Inc. TV, Hustles on a Mission every day. Sponsored. Hold on. Hustles on a Mission every day. Everyday Shit Media. Sponsored by dividendsapparel.com. My dog just walked in here. He must want to go outside. Shout out to my dog, Tupac, the realest dog out this bitch. What's up, my boy? What's up, my boy? What's up, my boy? All right, man. You trying to get in the camera and shit, bro. You can't get in the camera. All right, bro. All right, bro. Back up. And we gonna end it like that. You know what it is. Yeah. Till next time, remember, real niggas do what they want to do. Bitch niggas do what they can. Whole ass motherfuckers gonna talk about it. And fuck niggas gonna hate. Remember that. Hey, and don't be sleep out here, nigga. You can't be sleep out here, nigga. That's one thing you bet not be, nigga. Better wake your bitch ass up.